end is AP can enjoy eating her cookies, but how exactly does a skeleton manage to eat a cookie, digest it, and keep the contents inside? And there's a really sweet ending to it, which I really like. And then the next one is Sunny and Owl Girl. And again, as I mentioned earlier when we were at Paradise Comics, Sam drew a beautiful sketch of Sunny for Victoria. So Sunny and Owl Girl are these two young girls dressed in owl and sun-themed costumes. And what's really neat about this issue of Sunny and Owl Girl is that it's all produced in landscape format. So you actually have to turn the comic sideways and read it that way. And you see that Sunny and Owl Girl are meeting up in Owl Girl's treehouse, but it's getting wrecked by these gremlins who have somehow made their way into the treehouse and are eating all of her caramel and cheese popcorn. It turns out these gremlins have been sent by Dr. Sharkbrain, who wants to send out a giant robot menace to defeat Sunny and Owl Girl once and for all. And so it's a really neat story as these two little girls come across a gremlin who is different from other gremlins, and that he doesn't want to destroy things, he wants to fix things. And so Sunny and Owl Girl put their heads together to defeat Dr. Sharkbrain and his robot menace. And a really cute ending that kids will get a kick out of. This is another comic which I hope becomes an ongoing series in time, as with Skelt and AP, because my goodness, kids really do need and deserve to have more titles that are written for them, and Sam would just be perfect for this. And now I want to spend the remainder of this episode talking about the amazing graphic novel Zip Kramer, Savior of the Cosmos, written by, of course, Sam Noir, with art by Mr. Marvin Law. And Marvin, hopefully you're listening to this episode as well. I must apologize in that I'm not really familiar with Mr. Law's work, but suffice it to say, he has a very good pedigree in comics art. He's worked on things such as Kill Shakespeare Volume 1, Sea of Troubles for IDW Publishing, Skull Kickers number 10 for Image Comics, as well as the Stan Sakai project for Dark Horse Comics. So some works that I certainly need to do some deeper digging with, and hope to enjoy reading them someday in the future. Okay, so let me just give you the blurb that Sam and Marvin have provided on the back cover of Zip Kramer. Not quite in the tradition of Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers, Zip Kramer is the galaxy's worst hero ever. Inside these pages is an over-the-top action comedy space opera. It is pulp-style science fiction with a dash of Hong Kong action movies and Japanese anime mashed up with an edgy contemporary twist. And I can tell you folks that this is not just a slick piece of writing here. You are really getting a real homage, real love letter to things like Flash Gordon, to Buck Rogers, Hong Kong action movies, anime. This graphic novel really does have it all. There are 4 chapters in this graphic novel, and I actually read the second chapter first because Sam had it printed as a standalone issue. And And when I was talking with Sam and Marvin about it at the launch party, I was saying, you know, I don't think Zip is necessarily the worst hero in the galaxy. Based on what I read from this one issue, it's not completely his fault what happens to him in this issue. And they both laughed, and Victoria laughed along with them. And they said, well, just wait until you read the whole series. And I can see what they meant from reading this. There's a whole lot more to Zip than what was in that one standalone issue. Basically, what we get in this graphic novel is an exploration of the character of Zip Kramer at different points in his life. So in the first chapter, we see a young Zip Kramer who's wearing a very over-the-top costume. He's got blue cape. Most of his costume is blue and white, but it's got like the big shoulder pads. The headgear he wears actually reminds me of the headgear that Booster Gold wears. So it provides some protection for his, primarily for his ears, but it still allows him to flaunt his perfectly coiffed blonde hair, shows off his dashing facial features, but you can see that this is a costume that is really more about the visual appeal than for the function. And so we see young Zip Kramer going out thinking that he's saving a young damsel in distress, but what he perceives is very different from the reality. And so right in this first part, we can see that Zip Kramer is certainly not the best hero in the galaxy. Then in the second chapter, I imagine this takes place sometime after his first adventure, and we're introduced to the character of New One, who is, as her name suggests, considered by the people on her planet to be a nobody, a no one. And so she's looking for something more in her life. And so that's what brings her into contact with Zip Kramer, who has landed on her planet. He's at a bar, talking up, no doubt over-exaggerating his adventures in space. And New One is quite taken by Zip. And so what does she decide to do? She decides to stow away on his ship, where even though Zip is a loudmouth and quite possibly a drunkard, she's just taken by the man. And so unfortunately his discovery of her gets him distracted, and things don't end well as Zip finds himself again misperceiving things in his contact with an alien race. Leads to him and New One back on her planet, and you're left wondering, what's going to happen now? The next part, a little later, I'd say, in Zip's life, and we can see that New One has stayed with Zip, and even though he is something of a drunken lout, New One still sees something in him. And so we get to see yet another misadventure on Zip's part. We get more insight into New One as well. The fourth chapter is really interesting in that it jumps ahead a significant period of time where we get to see what's happened to New One. It's really neat to see what becomes of her. But what's also intriguing is seeing her go on a quest to find Zip, who by now is an older man. And he's a changed man as well. But here we get to see, maybe for the last time, but hopefully not, an adventure for Zip and the now adult New One. And I have to say, I read this entire graphic novel in one sitting. Normally, I don't do that. I like to spread out graphic novels and enjoy them over a period of time, but I guess it was just the stress from the day, and I needed to take my mind off. And once I got reading this novel, I could not put it down, literally. First off, blown away by Marvin Law's artwork. It really has a neat fusion of classic sci-fi comic art. It does have an anime influence to it in part. There's some neat, more cartoony art in parts, but it's all very cohesive. And again, Marvin's art really speaks to the tone of the stories that Sam is telling. And Marvin did tell me that there are plans for a second volume. And so in the second volume, certain questions that come up over the course of reading this first volume will be answered. And so when you put volumes 1 and 2 together, you're actually going to get a pretty neat non-linear type of story. So if you're a fan of works of Alan Moore, Quentin Tarantino, and you like a story that jumps back and forth in time, Zip Kramer is really going to be for you. I think one of the reasons why this character really appeals to me is that beyond just his visual appearance, like his face and his headgear, Zip actually reminds me of Booster Gold. I think Booster, over the last 30 years, has undergone this incredible maturation process where he starts out as the jerk, the buffoon, but over time he becomes a bona fide hero. He becomes somebody who cares about those around him. So looking at that last chapter where we see old Zip caring for New One, it really took me back to the second volume of Booster Gold, where we see that in the future, Booster is the father of Rip Hunter, and he even comes back to the present day at points to help his son out and to give his younger self an assist from the sidelines. So I think that's what really appeals to me about this character. Yes, he is not the best hero in the galaxy, but in time, there's no way that you can say that he's the galaxy's worst hero ever. If anything, you could say that Zip Kramer is one of those heroes who goes on to become an inspiration for others. So I'm going to keep my ear to the ground, looking out for upcoming stories of Zip Kramer, savior of the cosmos. And folks, my time is just about up. But again, please check the Facebook page for links to Sam's different Facebook pages, as well as his contact info, because his work, as well as the work of Marvin Law, really deserve greater recognition, and I hope that their works gain a much greater audience as the years pass. So folks, for episode number 111, I'm going to be going back to the golden age of comic books, looking at the great Canadian character of Johnny Canuck, created by Mr. Leo Batchel. So I'm wrapping up my reading of the Johnny Canuck collection that was recently produced by Chapter House. Looking forward to telling you all about that really great series from the 1940s. So that should come your way in a couple of weeks. Until those 14 days have come and gone, this class is dismissed.